Before we dive in and take a look around the property, I just wanted to give you the nuts and bolts of the land and also let you know that I filmed this over a few different visits, so I'm trying to keep it in as much of a logical sequence as possible. So the land we're about to explore is about 6 acres, and it ranges from about 2,100 feet elevation to just over 2,400 feet elevation. It's fairly steep. It has a mountain spring on it, and the primary reason we acquired the property is specifically for privacy, because it adjoins the property where my mountain apiary is, where I'm right now. The property that we just got that we'll take a look at is only accessed by our driveway. So if anyone else would have acquired it, we would then be sharing the driveway, and also if they were to build anything on it, then we'd be potentially having like sediment issues with our pond and the creek and all that stuff. So we just wanted to preserve our privacy and prevent any issues like that. And now we have some more space where we could put some more hives and maybe some other projects too, which we'll go into. So I just wanted to give that little scoop to you. And so the property has no structures on it of any significance. There are 2 hunting blinds, which we'll take a peek at. And like I mentioned, there is a mountain spring that runs through the center, and that does feed our existing pond and empties out into a larger creek. It fortunately has a road that's existing that goes into it. It's just not maintained, so it's a dirt road. There are a few level spots, but it really is a fairly steep property. But none of the spots are in full sun, which would be great for bees. But you know, there's opportunity if we wanted to clear some trees, which I'm not really keen on, and, you know, if we wanted to like get some full sun areas in there. But you know, it's always great to actually observe a property for a year before making any decisions. And this is a really great time of year because I like to wander a lot off trail when it's winter and when it's like early spring, because there's not as much of a risk of ticks. There's no poison ivy out. You can actually see a lot more of the landscape, because in this region, kudzu is a really big problem. And you know, right now you don't know where it is, but you know, we'll have to keep an eye on it throughout the year to see how much it's permeated into the property in there too. It's before all the leaves, all the trees have leafed out, so I'm not as great as identifying plants without their leaves, but just kind of taking a peek around to see what kind of ephemeral springtime plants are coming up and kind of get a good literal lay of the land. We've been back here a few times, but not to the extent that we're going to be back here, so I'll be sharing a little bit of my perspective on how to foster the habitat that's here, and also maybe some potential uses for the property other than a new apiary, hopefully. But as you can see, really beautiful, beautiful views all the way around. I'm still on my trek up to the top. There's also what my friend calls a book nook. It's a hunting stand. There's another hunting stand at the top, but this one has a roof on it that's a little in shambles, but it's in fairly sound shape other than a little hole in the roof. And yeah, we are just gonna explore, and I'll take you around so you can take a peek. The other thing that I'm doing is looking to see what kind of evidence of different trees are around. So I'm not sure if this is a variety of oak acorn or if it's in a different nut family. So documenting, and I'll research and find out. Or if you know, let me know. Still going up. So I took like 2 steps since showing you that one nut. So there's another. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, good. It's kind of getting in focus here. Let's see, in focus, focus. Okay, so this one has started to sprout, and then I took a step. This one had split open, so it's like pink inside. So I don't know if it turned this color because it was about to sprout, or if this nut has like a pinkish color to it. Something else to figure out. This is the other one, way up on the top of the ridge. I've seen people harvest these and then paint them like little murals. Still working our way up, but this is a view part way up from the trail. The mountain spring runs year-round because I did some research that says to watch it, to see if during droughts it runs. And we've, had our pond here for 2 years and it's fed by this spring and it's always running. But it's really nice to actually own the source of it now. I was hoping to spot some salamanders, but just looking at all the mosses, and I saw some rattlesnake plantain up here. There it is. There's a few of those specimens around. Just taking a peek at what kind of life is here in the spring. I just came down that trail and just exploring. So that's pretty much, it's the border of the property. I'll give you a little 360 around here. And it's a lot of pine. One of the potential uses, and I'll actually, probably the next time I come up here, I'll show you a little bit more of like how I don't want to say overgrown, but very thick the understory is of mountain laurel. It's just super, super dense. So like this particular trail, it's kind of like they say in a lot of the parks around here, you go through like rhododendron tunnels. This is like a mountain laurel tunnel. Actually carved out. It had been a trail for the board of the property a while ago, so we just kind of cleared it up. And one of the things that I'm hoping there might be a small section that we could use just kind of for fun is to have a like a little patch for growing Christmas trees, because this is over 2,400 foot elevation, and I've been researching different kinds, and that would be one potential, not a primary use, but just kind of like for fun. It'd be nice to plant some seedlings, and then maybe 5-6 years from now we could start harvesting for our own use or for friends and family. And then the other thing that I'm considering, because I've been experimenting with it, is tapping maple trees. I know there are a bunch of maples out here. I've seen in when all the leaves have, when all the trees have leaves. I keep getting those confused. Those words mixed up. So just looking to see what potential sites, maybe there's like a higher density of maple in a certain area, and it might be easier to collect sap from like a single space rather than throughout the forest. The other thing, as you can see with this trail, and then the other trail that I took up here, was actually it has enough space for a vehicle to come up. It's just I wouldn't want to test it, but like if we got a UTV or something like that, then we'd be able to have more access and bring supplies up, bring things down. So that's not really on the horizon anytime soon, but over the next couple of years, I'd like to get one so that I'd be able to bring hive equipment up and bring honey down. So let's just keep wandering around and I'll show you some more. I think this is a great example of the high density of pine. So there's a lot of pine, which is fantastic habitat. You can see like this one is kind of rotting away. It's great for insects to be in there, and then woodpeckers come by. I've seen a lot of pileated woodpeckers through here, and a lot of these pine, I've seen a bunch of nests in them, either squirrels and other critters. You can see all the mountain laurel over here. So the nice thing about this is that as a beekeeper, I will have no shortage of pine straw for my smoker. And also, what was I gonna say? If we were to landscape with pine straw, that we have that here as well. So that is in abundance. Sharing a little tip that I learned from a friend who has grown up in North Carolina. She explained to us that purple paint is a sign of no hunting on this property. It's kind of a universal thing around North Carolina. So we actually started to mark the border with purple paint. We are nowhere near done doing that. And I'm also going to be getting some signs as well. And we have a lot of surveillance too. And I have a beekeeper friend who she has a place just north of Asheville. So right now we are west of Asheville. And what she has done, so like you can see, we did some purple paint over here and on the next trees. So like that's not our property over here. But what she has done is she has her camera set up. So, you know, they do live alerts. They let her know if someone's there, and then they're able, if they are present out there, they send out a drone, and they have the drone come take photos of the people, usually hunters, and she's able usually to find their vehicle and get pictures from their drone of their license plate, and she has been able to press charges from what I understand. So you know, we're kind of employing similar practices. Our drone isn't as sophisticated as hers. I am just kind of imagining, but just kind of like having those methods in place can be a little reassuring. And usually once folks realize they're on camera, they don't come back anymore. One thing that was on my mind, but I didn't really have my my camera out while I was walking parts of the trail. The other thing, looking at a property with a permaculture lens, is looking at risks involved. So, you know, we do get heavy rainfall out here, but there's really not, like this particular property, there's not really a risk of mudslides or rock slides or anything like that. But there's also a risk of wildfires. So, you know, going through those different patches of pine, thinking about those risks that are inherent to this region and which may become more apparent as climate changes, looking at those areas and thinking, okay, those may not be areas where you'd want to site structures because it could be a much more of a fire risk. You know, thin out those pine areas. You might want to work with someone who's really well educated on forest management and perhaps do controlled burns and things to help keep the land as resilient as possible in the event of a wildfire spreading. One of the other things that I'm looking for are just kind of remnants of other things. So I just pulled this PVC pipe out of the side of the trail here, and there's actually another one extending. There's been a lot of like black tubing. You can see Indy is up there waiting for me. He's being such a good boy. And we were told that at one time some folks had kind of piped into the spring up ahead and were like gravity feeding it down. So I'm not sure when this stuff was put in. Like it's not connected anymore, so I'm kind of inclined to remove any material that we see just to, you know, not have some trash lying around. But at the same time, if this is something that we could just reconnect and utilize for maybe some irrigation things, that could be a possibility. So Indy's being so good waiting for me up there, but I kind of wanted to show you like way down in here. And I might flip this around actually, so you can be a little better. Much better looking here. So Indy's hanging out up there, and you can kind of see. So the border is kind of running through here where that flashing is, but the creek is running down in here. So this is fed by a mountain spring further up the hill. So from like a permaculture perspective, like looking at, you know, this is like a really great resource. It's ongoing. Perpetual spring. Good boy, Pop Pop. Good boy. Stay right there. And so this could be, you know, irrigation or a water source if you're gonna have some type of livestock way up here. Probably goats or sheep would be like the best fit for these hills. But like with this particular waterway here, so this prompts a few different things. This prompts, we've got Cute Boy up here with the road, so this would be access to the rest of the land. So one of the items would be if we want to, utilize this property more, is to have this road improved, which poses some concern for like sediment runoff into, the creek here, which this feeds our pond further down the hill. And so just making sure, it's done properly. And then thinking of like water loving plants. So thinking of like pawpaws, they love shade. So like right now we have some really great sun exposure because it's on the cusp of spring. And so all the trees, haven't gotten their leaves yet. Also, just take a look at this really amazing poplar right here. So cool. It's actually like it grew and then fused back together. Good boy, Indy, come back here. And so thinking of like, okay, like, do you want to plant like pawpaws and willow and hey baby, like other water loving trees and plants, elderberry. We've got some elderberry further down the creek here. But just thinking of like, okay, that's going to attract wildlife. So if we were going to have, eventually, if we wanted to have like a little structure up here, then we'd want to make sure we're not like attracting wildlife to where we'd be hanging around. But thinking of that, and also like I had mentioned, like if we're going to improve this road, we don't want to plant, trees right here that would get disturbed by excavation and improvements that are made here. So really thinking about, future use. And that way when you're designing with an eye for that future vision. And you can see right over here, there's actually some more of that black tubing that's coming out there. So I feel like it's been partially, buried under here. So I'm imagining it's, fairly old, but at the same time, it's not old enough. There's more tubing down there. I'm seeing by some of that pink. It's over here. It's not like, it's actually like young enough to actually be around from, it's not older than plastic, basically, is like the words that I'm trying to find there. Are you gonna go get a drink, mister? Go get a good drink down there. Good boy. You're fine. You're good. Go get a drink. Good job. Good job. So, yeah, so considering that, the other thing you can notice is very steep. So we got a lot of dense mountain laurel, rhododendron, lots of great hardwoods. So like up here is a lot less pine. So we've got beech, you can tell by the leaves that are still on the trees. Like I mentioned, poplar. I see some of the red maple is starting to leaf out already, and a bunch of oak. Good boy, Pop Pop. You gonna come back over in a minute? Yeah, good man. Get another drink. That's good. Good boy. And so looking at those as like, do we, are we looking for, firewood use and things like that? And are there going to be some saplings? Like I saw some hickory nuts down here. So I know we've got some hickory. Like, do we want to look for saplings this spring of like different trees and recite them in other areas? That could be a potential use. The holly that's here, it's a great nectar producer for pollinators. So like all of these trees are great for, the bees here and providing some great habitat. So just, these are some things that are going through my mind as I'm looking at the property from this particular lens. All right, let's keep going, mister. This is some rattlesnake plantain. And I've also been seeing some yellow violet. There's a big cluster, some more little yellow violet, but there's a nice big cluster I just walked through back there. The rattlesnake plantain, I need to look it up. I know there's medicinal uses of it. You can also see more of this black tubing coming down, just kind of gravity feeding, where it used to gravity feed the water. So I'm not certain of the medicinal uses of it, but I read that it's rare, but I've seen a lot of it in this area, so I feel like it's common here, but maybe just overall on the East Coast, it may not be as common, but I've seen that, and I'm trying to identify some others. I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, but I think it's Sipiwawa or Pisiwawa, or I'm going to have to look it up and see what the name of it is, because I see a lot of it around here, and that also has some native medicinal uses of it too. But you can kind of see like this road that was put in, I'm imagining it was put in 20-ish, maybe more years ago. So it's, I mean, not terribly overgrown given how much time it's just been hanging out here, but you know, it's wide enough for a vehicle, definitely wide enough for a UTV. So this is, you know, a primary entryway to access the site. He's being so good. Is he amazing just hanging out here? So good. Something that I'd like to do at some point is to acquire land that can be preserved. So over the past few years, I've been looking into conservation easements and land trusts, and I would like to get one at one point. So I thought when this land became available, this might be a good opportunity to do that. But with the research that I've done, I feel like for our needs, a conservation easement may be too restrictive because it would prevent, you know, if we do want to change what we want to use the property for at some point, it would kind of limit us, and I don't really want to do that. And knowing that we are managing it with, you know, with our, you know, our own approach, you know, while we're owning it, of keeping it conserved, I'm okay with that. The other issue that I ran into when I was researching sanctuaries and having land designated as a sanctuary is that a lot of those services, like, you are pretty much putting your property on a map so anyone can find it. And I was reading that, like, some hunters will scout out specifically those sanctuaries. So like if there's a deer sanctuary, you know, even though it's, you know, not allowed, they are like, oh, well, they know the deer are there, so they'll go hunting there, even though they're not supposed to. So in a way, it's kind of like drawing more attention than necessary, as we could just, you know, make sure we're managing the property in the way that we feel is helping the wildlife. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, so my main apiary at home is a certified wildlife habitat. It's also, I have like 2 or 3 other designations. All of those designations, it's kind of a pay-to-play program. There's no inspection required. You pay a service and it's kind of an honor system. You commit to managing the land according to the practices that they require, and that's an ongoing kind of perpetual commitment that you make. But again, there's no one checking on you. There's no annual fee that, you know, it's just kind of a one-time thing. So I could very much easily get all those certifications for this property as well. I really haven't had a need to do that. So, but I just wanted to mention that too, if there are folks that are interested in getting those certifications for their own, you know, apiaries and their own land too. I was at a conference a few weeks ago, and one of the vendors at the conference manages an organization that runs permaculture land trusts, and I had never heard of that before. So in chatting with them, they're primarily looking for active farms and land areas that have been managed with a permaculture lens, and that have, like, whether it's like heirloom apple varieties or particular, you know, farm practices that they're growing certain produce that they don't want that to be lost, and that soil to be lost to condos and development and all those things. So they offer these permaculture land trusts that allow the landowners to, you know, pass it on similar to a conservation trust, but instead of the land being preserved for wildlife or you know, similar needs, it's actually preserved to help educate others on permaculture and to ensure the preservation of whatever varieties are being grown there or species that may be present as well. So that looked really interesting. But of course, when I was chatting with the fellow there, I was like, what's your perspective on raw land? You know, and it was like, no, that's not, like, it's just a resource there. Like, it's not a permaculture practice that's in place. So, you know, it's not like, you know, if there's raw land, if there maybe was like some wild apples or something on it, but it doesn't really qualify for their permaculture land trust needs. But, you know, if this was an area that, you know, we end up cultivating with those particular practices in mind, and then sourcing particular, you know, varieties of whatever we want to manage here, if we do anything, then maybe many years down the road it could be a good candidate. But at this point, raw land really isn't a good candidate for a permaculture land trust. I'm back home now, and I wanted to leave you with a potential apiary sites that I noticed while exploring the property. One is in that one, the larger of the hunting blinds. It is, elevated. It's not in full sun, but there's not a lot of pine trees in that area. And the reasons I'm saying that are because small hive beetles really prefer pine, which is the struggle I'm having with my bees out there right now. And so I thought with the being elevated, that might be good. Also having it elevated, I know that's not gonna totally protect it from bear, but there are some things we could do to the structure to prevent bear from climbing up. I've been researching different bear prevention methods, so I might do a separate video on it, maybe once I really learn more and maybe implement a few potential practices. One of them happens to be the new hive design that I'm using, the lay-ins hive. I just set that up, and I have a separate video coming out soon about moving bees into the lay-ins hive and some failures and some successes from it as well. But I feel like there are certain features of that hive design that I think would set it up for more success to withstand a bear attack if a bear were to get to it. Let me know what you think of the property and if there are certain things that stood out to you about potential uses and maybe some alternative options for some apiary sites, or at the very least, some great swarm traps could be set up out there because there's a lot of options for that.